Welcome to another class of Python for app development. In my previous class, I've shown you how you can create yourself up a grid layout and customize your template, or let's say customize your console in your app. In this class, I'm going to show you every step and every method, what you can do by making yourself up a stacked layout inside of your app. Now, some of them, it's going to be very complex, so I would suggest you do not skip any part because every part of it is very case sensitive and also very sensitive on indentation. So I would suggest you follow up everything that I do, but you can also try using different variables by your need. So without any further ado, let's move on to our class by opening up PyCharm on our device without any further ado. So on my screen, you can see that I have open. And in this class, I'm going to show you both methods of working on the KV file and also the main Python file. Well, both of them are going to be very effective on your console or on your app. So let's try turning it on or play the whole thing. You can see we have my stack layout, or let's say our grid layouts applied to our app or our console. So here we're going to start off with our stack layout and customize it the way we want to. Okay. So let's just go off of the main py file, and I'm going to create a couple of spaces. And here I'm going to put in another class. So after class, I'm going to put in stack layout example. There we go, stack layout example. And here I'm going to put in stack layout. Okay. And right after that, we're going to pass it along. Pass. And this time we're not going to be using hash code because we are going to be working with both of our main file and also our KV file. So first off, we're just going to import it inside of our, let's say, from file. So I'm going to take this over here. I'm going to put in from kv.uix.stackLayout and import it as stack layout as our definition. Okay, so as we have it as my definition inside of my main py file, and you're going to change out the definition inside of the kv file too. So let's just get to the top of this, and inside we're going to make a couple of space because we're not going to be needing that. And here, let's just say I'm going to put in stack layout example. So let's just copy this. Stack layout example, Control C. I'm going to paste it right over here. I'm going to take it at the beginning and start it off too. And put in a colon. There we go. Now, as we have put in our stacked layout as our definition, we have to put in a button or whatever we prefer inside of it. Okay. So what we're going to do is that we can create ourselves a button and also a text to represent up the data inside of our console. So let's say I'm going to start off with a numerical value or an alphabetical value according to your need. So if I put in button and if I put in the text as my value, and if I put in A, and if I play it out, you'll basically see it might show me an error. But if you're using version 3, it will show you that the button is now taking up the whole space inside of the console. Now, if we put in a numerical value, let's say I'm going to put in 14 and play it out, it's also going to be displayed inside of my console. But if I reduce up the size, it will still stay the same. So we are going to be creating a couple of these buttons and show you how you'll be able to customize it. Okay. But before our customizations, we are going to be using the arguments so that we can customize the size of the button. So for customizing the size, we are going to be using sizeInt instead of size. So if I put in size underscore int and play it out, let's say the width of it should be around 3, comma, and the height is also going to be 3. So if I play it out, it's going to be the same way. So if I just put let's say I'm going to make another button so that I can show you the example. So I'm going to put in button, and here I'm going to put in text, colon, inside I'm going to put in, let's say 16. And if I play it out, it's going to be at the bottom and it's going to take up a lot of space. Okay. So as it has taken up a lot of space, we're going to be using the same, let's say the size. Okay. So for the size, we're going to be copying this up over here too. So if I put in size dot size hint. Let's say I'm going to create a size hint over here. And we're going to be creating the same size, so 0.3, comma 0.3. So if I play it out, you'll basically see it's going to be at the top corner. Okay. So it's just going to keep on customizing over and over again. So if I just apply another button over here, button, I'm going to put in text, colon, let's say this time I'm going to put in, let's say 19, and I'm going to create the same size hint, colon, 0.3, comma 0.3. If I play out the whole thing, now you'll basically see we have 3 buttons applied. So if I reduce up the size, you can see it is still very dynamic and at its exact spot. But we are going to be customizing it in such a way so that we can create a lot of buttons and it's not going to be dynamic but static, okay? So to make it that, we are going to have to customize our main PY file. But before that, we're going to go through step by step. So let's create 3 more buttons so that we have it inside of our, let's say, console. So I'm going to just copy all of these. I'm not going to be doing it manually. So I'm going to hit on enter over here and hit on space. There we go. Now I'm going to customize these buttons. So after 19, I'm going to say it's going to be 18. After that, it's going to be 17. And after that, it's going to be 13. So if I play out the whole thing, it's going to have a lot of these buttons inside of our console, but this is still at its exact spot. We can also create a couple of spacing in between them. So if I just put in spacing, space, and if I put in, let's say 2, and if I hit on enter or play out the whole thing, it's going to show me, okay, I'm going to put in 6, play out the whole thing. You can still see it is not working. Why is it not working? Because we are now using stack layout as an example, and these buttons are basically going to take up the size instead of the spacing. Okay, so this is how it actually values up that specific value. So I'm going to put in 2 over here. And if I play it, it's going to have that small size. So if I customize this one and if I type in none, let's say I'm going to put in colon, and if I put in none, and if I play it out, you'll basically see it will also change. So that is basically how it will work. So I'm going to press on Control Z to undo all of these processes, and it's going to keep all of them the same. If I put in 1 on each and every one, so let's just say I'm going to do is going to be putting in 0.1 or let's say 0.2, whichever one you prefer, 0.1 on this one. And if I play out the whole thing, this is how it's going to look like. And we're going to copy all of this over here. Control C, Control V. I'm going to keep this console right over here. Copy, paste. Paste this over here. Paste this on this one. And also paste this on this one. Play out the whole thing, and all of those buttons are going to be right over here. Okay, so now we have all of the buttons, and now we are going to be customizing it just the way we want to, but we are going to be using the main file to customize it. Okay, so you can also remove out these customizations on the KV, but we're going to go after the main PY file, and instead of pass, we're going to be using the definition function. So here I'm going to put in def. It's just what I'm going to do is hit on def. And after def, I'm going to put in double underscore, and I'm going to put in init and then self. And inside of self, I'm going to put in the quarks value. So I'm going to put in a comma, double asterisk, and KWARGS. There we go. Put in a colon at the end. And you're also going to be using super under, like say, parentheses. And I'm going to put in, let's say, init. You're not going to be putting in anything. So dot init self and quarks. So there we go. Inside, I'm just going to put in KWARGS. So start off with 2 asterisks and then put in quarks value. Now, after that, we're going to be customizing our buttons inside of that console. Okay. So here I'm going to write to, let's say, create my button inside of that console. Okay. Because in the KV file, we've used these buttons But inside my main py file, I'm going to make myself a button as a variable. So if I put in v as my variable, I'm going to put in an equal sign. This is going to represent my button. So I'm going to type in button, and obviously I want a text inside of it. So the text which I'm going to be using is going to be, let's say, R. So I'm going to put in double quotation and put in R inside. So now you can play out the whole thing, but before that, we are going to use the self again, or let's say the self function, to actually show or represent the widget inside of that console. So I'm going to make a button. So I'm going to put in, let's say, self. I'm going to put in dot add widget. And there we go. It's going to open up the parentheses, and we have to use the variable, which is basically this one. So here you're going to put in v as my variable, and it is already detecting up the value. Okay. So now you're going to just play up the whole thing, and you'll basically see that it might show me R as that specific value, and it is also working as a widget. Okay. Now you can see that as you are successful, if you reach this phase, make sure to always check up the indentation level. Make sure that all of them are inside of this definition function. Okay. Now we're going to be changing our size. If you want to change out the size, you can put in the values, or you can use the function size hint inside of the button too. So here after R, I'm going to put in a comma, and I'm going to put in the size hint. Okay, so after I have my size hint, you're going to use the equal sign over here, because now we are on the Python file. And here you're going to open up the parentheses. And inside of the parentheses, you're going to start off with the DP. Okay, but you can also work on with the width and height at the same time. So if you want to use the width and height, then you have to put in that specific value. Let's say 0.3, 0.3. And now if I play out the whole thing, this is how it's going to show me. Okay, but if I want to use 1, which I'm using in my kv file, I'm going to put in 1, and it's going to be the exact size like those other ones. Okay, so you can see R, 14, 16, 19, 18, 17, and 13. But one thing you can see over here, it is working just the same way we have done it on the kv file from the beginning. Okay, so now let's just move along, and we are also going to be using more customization, and we're going to modify it a bit more. Okay, so if we want to modify a bit more, first thing, we're going to remove out the customizations on the kv file, because we do not need it right now. Okay, as I'm showing you the secondary method of showing you how you can customize your Python file to customize your stack layout too. So here I'm just going to go over here, and I'm going to remove out all of these buttons, because we are not going to be needing that. So let's just remove all of these. And now if I still play it out, it's only going to show me R as the value, but both of them are bypassed, and this kv file is still using the main py file as the base, or as the origin. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is going to be creating more buttons inside of, the main py file and inside of our console. But we are not going to be using the kv file. Instead, we're going to use the Python file. So right after the super button, or the super function, I'm going to create myself another value. But I'm going to use the for value, let's say for y as my variable, y in range. There we go. And inside my range, I'm going to put in the value, let's say 0, to 9. So there we go. We have value 0 to 9. And I'm going to put in a colon outside. Okay, so now for each time, it's going to create automatical buttons inside of my console. So we have to display that inside of my text as a string. So now you can see this is being used as a string. So I'm going to remove out this R. I'm going to put in str. Inside of my str, open up the parentheses, and I'm going to put in, let's say, y. And what you're going to do is going to be added up with 1, so that it's going to show me that how it is working. Okay, I'm going to close up the parentheses. There we go. Now, as we have it as my first value over here, str, and it's also going to show me how it is working. Okay, so I'm going to remove out the parentheses, because when you use parentheses in a string, it's going to basically just postpone up the whole process. Okay, so I'm going to play it out, and you'll basically see it might show me an error at line 12. This is y in range 0 to 10. So I'm going to do is make sure to put in a space. And now let's play up the whole thing. And you can see we still have that value for y plus 1. Okay, so I'm going to put in a comma right outside of it. And make sure to put in double brackets. You can see for v button, we are using this text. Okay, so button, open the parentheses, and then text str let's say y plus 1 as the value. And what you're going to basically do is going to play out the whole thing. And if we want to use I as the value, so I'm going to put in I. There we go. We have I as the value. So let's just try using I over here. And let's just play out the whole thing. Basically, if you see this error, what you're going to basically do is just take this value and you're going to increase up the indentation a bit more on the right, because now you want that string to be the base. So I'm going to hit on tab, and now if you play it out, it will show you out the buttons, and this is basically how it works. Okay, now you can also increase up the size just the way you want to. Let's say instead of 1, I'm going to be using 2 as the value, so or maybe 3. So if I put in 2 over here, and now if I play it out, it will increase up the size. And now you can also use it, but yet you can see it is still dynamic. It is still not moving at its own pace. Okay. So as I have all of these buttons up till 9, you can also turn it into 10 or 15 or 20. So if I put in, let's say 20 over here and play out the whole thing, it's going to create 21 of these buttons. Okay. So you can see from 1 to 20. Okay, you can create up to a lot of buttons inside of your console. Now, if I put in 25, it's going to fill up the whole page. So I'm just gonna show it to you as an example. 25, and there we go. We have the whole page. Okay, so there we go. 25 is the number for filling up the whole page. But obviously, you will want to create a lot more buttons, right? So what if you want to create a lot more of these buttons? So I'm going to show you more examples right now, but first off, we're going to fix up our size inside of our size hint. If we try putting in, let's say, a none value inside, it will also take up the default size. So I'm going to put in a space. There we go, none, and hit on enter. And you can see it's going to create the exact default size of these buttons. Okay, so there we go. We have up till 25, and it will move up to a lot. So we can also try 30, 40. Okay, basically up to you as long as and how big as you want. And right after the size in, we can also customize our buttons a bit more. Okay, so for that, after the size hint, I'm going to create more sizes. So I'm going to put in a comma, and I'm going to put in, let's say, the size of the displays. So I'm going to put in size equal, and then you're going to open up the parentheses, and we're going to use dp as the value. And inside my dp value, I'm going to put in another parentheses to actually represent up my value. So here I'm going to put in, let's say, 99%. Okay. Now, when you are using this display as the variable, then what you have to do is you have to import it as the metrics inside of the from Kivy. Okay. So I'm going to apply or import it directly manually. So I'm going to take this from Kivy dot metrics. Okay. Metrics, import the DP, which is the display pixel. There we go. And now it's going to understand it a bit more. So here, after we have imported it up, now we have put in basically the width, but we need the height too. So I'm going to put in a height, which is going to be the exact same way. So right after that, I'm going to put in, let's say, comma. I'm going to put in another DP. Inside, you're going to put in another value. Let's say it's going to start off from here. Make sure that this doesn't end over here. So I'm going to put in inside DP. Another value, it says 99% display pixel. Okay. Now, one thing you're going to see is that make sure that there are 3 and 4 of these, let's say 3, 4 of these brackets or parentheses as my closing one. So you have to count it out too. Make sure that there are 3, not 4. If there is an extra one, just make sure to remove one of them. So let's just check out this one. There we go. There we go. This one is this DP over here. And the last one is for the text. Okay. So when you're using this as the text, so let's just try playing it out. You'll basically see now it is creating a bit more space. So let's open it up again. And now if we reduce it, you can see now it has gone very static. No matter how many times you like take this like this, it's going to just reduce up the size and it's going to just increase in the length. Okay. So now you can see how good it actually looks and how better it actually functions. Okay. So you'll be able to create a lot more than just this. Okay. So I'm going to reduce up the number because there's a lot of these buttons and we don't need a lot of them. So let's just say I'm going to keep it up to 11 and play it out. There we go. We have 1 to 11. And it also functions up the same way. If we reduce up the size, it's going to reduce up and it's just going to increase in height. Okay. You'll also be able to create increase up the size over here too. Okay. Now, the next thing, what we're going to do is going to follow up how you can customize the same size using a different value over here. Okay, so first thing is that we are going to be creating or clicking on this size button over here right after range. Okay, so I'm going to take this one right after 4. I'm going to create up my size arguments. So here, I'm going to put in size. And here, I'm going to put in the display pixel equal DP. And you're going to put in the same value. Let's say I'm going to put in 99 as my value. And I'm going to add it up as my variable. Okay, so plus, and now I'm going to put in, let's say, the variable I, and I'm going to do is going to be using the asterisk sign to actually multiply it with 10. So if I put in asterisk sign over here, and if I put in 10, it's not going to actually, identify it. But what you're going to do is going to be, you can check it out on your own. It's still working the same way. Okay. So what we're going to do is going to be changing out the values inside of my size argument inside of my variable right over here so that we can change out the size of each and every one of them. So what we're going to do is going to be removing out the DP. So let's just say I'm going to remove out the DP. And here you're going to use the variable, which is size. So here you're going to put in size and you're going to put in size over here too. Let's just remove out this part. I'm going to put in size as my variable. Now, as I have put in my size as my, now what it will basically do is that it's going to use this specific variable and it's going to change up the button size one by one. Okay, so if it is 0 or if it is 1, it's going to be small. If it is 2, it's going to be a bit more bigger and so on. It's just going to get greater and greater. Play out the whole thing and now you can see we have different sizes for each and every one of these buttons and it just keeps on growing up till it reaches this. So if we increase it up till here, it's going to be looking like this. Let's just take it right over here and it can also create more and it's still going to be increased. So if I just put in, let's say 15 and if I play it out, it's going to be a lot more increased. You can see 15 is a lot bigger. So let's just open it up again. There we go. We have 15. You can also create more according to your need. We can also reduce this up just like this. And it's still going to be working just the way I want it to be and how I put it as my variable. Okay. So now let's just close it off and let's move on with our class. Now, just in case, if you want to let's check it out again. And you can see it is being stacked from left to right. You can also fix out the orientation of the stack layout too. So first thing we're going to do is going to be removing out this, let's say this over here. Let's just remove out the size if we want to, but it looks quite good. So let's just remove this over here. Let's just play it out. You can see this looks exactly how it should be. And now what I want to do is that I'm going to show you the alternate method and how you can use that KV file too, so that I can show you or prove that both of them are intertuned. Okay. So if I just go off of the KV file, I'm going to use my orientation over here, but you can also try the orientation over here, but it might be a bit more complex. So if I try orientation, and if we just put in, let's say, if I put in horizontal, it will not work. Okay. So I'm just going to put in horizontal. And if I play it out, you can see that this is still working the same way. So one thing you can understand from over here is that it's not going to take up this argument and understand it. Okay. So we have to put it inside of the KV file to make it a lot more easier. So if you want to go off, or if you have to go off the KV file, you're going to put in the orientation. But there are a couple of things you have to keep one thing in mind when you are working with stack layout. Because first off, that is dynamic. And the next thing, we are working with different values, okay? And it's not even manual. It is working based on Python. So you have to use specific arguments. So first thing is that if I put in the orientation over here, make sure to not put in any value, but inside you have to work on with a string. So to make yourself up a string, I'm going to put in the hash command. And you know that when I play out the whole thing, it basically works on from the left to right and then goes from the top to bottom. So in this type of stack layout, there are two specific and most easiest type of method, or most easiest type of orientation, which starts from left to right and top to bottom. So you're going to type in left to right, and then the other value is top to bottom. Okay, so we have two of these values. Now if we want to fix out the orientation, now we can type in that double quotation, and if I put in left to right, left to right, and then it's going to move up to top from bottom. So if I play it out, it's still going to be the same. But if we change it from right to left, and if I play out the whole thing, it's going to be starting from the right to the left and then the bottom. We can do the same thing with top to bottom. We can start it from bottom to top and play out the whole thing. And now it's going to start off from the right bottom. Okay, so you can see how simple it is. Now you can, if you want to work it, or if you want to show it inside of your Python file, you basically have to do the same thing, but you have to use self orientation. Okay, so to use the self orientation, first off, go to the main py file. And what you're going to do is that you're going to put in another line of command inside of it. Okay, first off, what you're going to do is go after the super, or the super line over here. And here you're going to put in self, and then you're going to put in dot orientation. Now you can see this is being understood by Python. So here I'm going to put in a colon, and here you're going to put in double quotation, let's say maybe left to right, and then to bottom top. Okay, so as we have it, now you can try playing out the whole thing. But one thing you're going to see is that you have to use the equal instead of the colon. So put in the equal value over here and play up the whole thing. And you might see this is how it looks like, left to right. But still you can see that it is taking up the KV file as the main one. Okay, so to use it as the main one, what you have to do is basically remove out the parts in the KV file. Okay, so to fix it up, what you basically have to do is that use the hash command over here. Let's just put in the hash. There we go. And now if we go over here and left to right, top to bottom, and now you can see this one has been fixed. Now, if you want to also customize it, let's say maybe I want right to left. And if I play out the whole thing, it's going to be from the right to the left. Okay, there we go, right to the left. And we can also fix out the top to bottom. We can do this over here, T and B, play out the whole thing, and you can see this one has been fixed. Okay, so basically now you know how you can use the orientation, but we can also use a bit of padding inside of it, which is going to make it look a bit more better. So to do that, we're going to go off the KV file, and right after orientation, you're going to put in padding. And here, I'm going to put in a colon, open up the parentheses, and inside you're going to use the display. Okay, so double quotation again, and you're going to put in, let's say, maybe 30 as the padding, 30 dp. And now you can see that this is basically going to be the padding value. And you can also fix out the height of the padding. Let's say maybe the height of the padding, I'm going to put in, let's say 60. Okay, 60 dp. So make sure to put that in double quotation, 60 dp. And then you can close off the parentheses and you can try playing out the whole thing. Okay, make sure to put in the comma. And now let's just try playing it out. And you can see we have those paddings applied to my console. And you can also make different arrays by making more values or creating more of these paddings inside. So maybe after 60, I can also put in, let's say, maybe 20. I'm going to put in colon, or let's say double quotation, 20 dp. And after that, I'm going to put in 40 dp. 40 dp. Okay, so let's play out the whole thing. And now you can see it is working just the way I want it to be. So if I just remove any one of these, you can see this is how it works. Play out the whole thing. And you can see this might show you an error, but this is now convertible. So I'm going to put in this over here, 20 dp. So let's just remove out this part. Let's just play it out. And you can see this one is working just the way I want it to be. Now you can also create a bit of spacing, but if you want to create spacing, then you basically have to also fix up the horizontal or the vertical axis. And then you have to basically remove out the padding, or you have to use the hash command inside. So I'm going to put in the hash over here. And the next one, what I'm going to use as the argument is going to be the spacing. Okay. So on the spacing, I'm going to also put in that specific value. So colon, and here I'm going to be working with, let's say, 28 or maybe like 30 dp. Okay. So I'm going to put in double quotation. I'm going to put in 30 dp, comma, double quotation. Now you have to put in that specific value, 30 dp on both axes. Okay. So now if I just play out the whole thing, it's going to have that exact spacing which we need. Okay. Now if you remove out these values and if you use the hash command, it's going to be postponed. And you can also postpone the, let's say, the orientation command, or let's say the self orientation inside the main py file. If I reduce it, you can see it is still working just the way I want it to be. So first thing you're going to do is that go after the main py file. And you can see on the self or the default self orientation file, what I'm going to do is use the hash command. Okay, I'm going to put in the hash over here so that it is also postponed, but it will still work. Okay, so now you can see it is working from the left to the right and top to the bottom. So I'm also going to be postponing the spacing so that we can make sure that it is working right. So if I want to postpone that too, I'm going to put in the hash. And now you'll basically see it will get back to its default self how it was. Okay, you can see this is how it should look like. So now you understood about how you can customize your, let's say, this stack layouts and how you want the spacing to be, how you want the paddings to be. And you can also work on with the for function, and you can also change up the numerical value to make sure that it works too. So to do that, you also have to go back to the main py file. And let's say you want to make like 100 buttons. So you're just going to do is just change up the numerical value. Let's say 100. Play it out, and you'll basically see it's going to create ourselves 100 buttons inside of the console. And we can also just, remove out the hash commands, and all of the customizations or modifications which you've done will be applied on each and every one of these 100 buttons inside of this console. So let's just take it at the top. And if I take it at the top over here, you'll be able to increase up the size and check out all of these numbers inside. So if I just go off the KB file, and if I just remove out these values, there we go. And if I play out the whole thing, you might see an error sometimes because there is a lot of values going on. So you just have to remove all of these, go off the main py file, play out the whole thing. And then you might see an error again. You can see left to right, top to bottom. It is still not, let's just take this over here, put in a hash command over here, and let's just keep all of this the same. And now you can see we have the paddings and the spacing applied to these values and to these buttons inside of this console or the app. So hope you understood everything about this class on how you'll be able to create yourself of the app and how you can create these buttons, apply spacing, apply paddings, and create automatical buttons or widgets inside of your console with ease with Python. So thank you for watching this video again, and hope you understood about everything in this class. If you still have any confusion or any question about any part of this lesson, feel free to ask me anytime. I'm always there to help you out. If you have Let's say if you have like network issue during the process, then I would suggest you can also turn off the internet like on your PC or on your desktop and try using it, because when you're working with a console and when you're working with Python, you don't necessarily need internet connection. And sometimes what happens is that it also ruins up the whole thing, or it also postpones up a couple of steps. So try using that, or try using this method, and it might get fixed. Okay. So without any further ado, let's move on to our next class of Python for app development.